What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. I know we're talking about Alberta prosperity a lot, but hey, politics are taking a break over the summer as the feds leave Parliament Hill. I don't necessarily agree they should be leaving Parliament Hill when, well, they've kind of had a vacation for the last year. That being said, a lot is changing on the front when it comes to Alberta independence. In fact, a lot that's made me question, where does Alberta go from here? How does Alberta succeed when it comes time to discussing its independence? After all, the fact that the Canadian government is ignoring it to such an extent tells me that we are in fact winning this, that maybe they want Alberta to leave. The proof is in the pudding, because the numbers are growing astronomically. I've covered on this channel to great extent how recent polls have showed that anyone who's following the UCP are more likely to vote in favor of Alberta independence. And in fact, Danielle Smith holding a very comfortable lead when it comes to the UCP. So that at least points that the roughly 48% of Albertans that are ready to put yes on a document, yes on a referendum question, are ready to go. What's interesting is this week, and one thing I want to update people on is there's going to be some information coming out that is going to help people make that decision. That is the purpose that I'm trying to do on this channel when it comes to informing Albertans. After all, a very large portion of our audience is Albertan. And not only that, 25% roughly of Alberta's voting population watches this channel every single month. So it's only important that we get that information out. However, I have talked about special interest groups. We've shown how there's certain chiefs within First Nations that are taking money from special interest groups. There is a lot of money to discuss about leaving Alberta. I'll get into some of that later in this video. But one thing I wanted to talk about was the distractions. I've always said distractions are something we're going to have to watch out for as these numbers grow, and they certainly did over the weekend. And again, we'll get into that, but this is the best thing to get out of the way front and center. Corey Morgan tweeting out after this tweet that says recent polling shows a majority of Canadians would support refusing to allow Alberta to leave Canada. It appears that they hate us, yet they won't allow us to leave. What path and actions should Alberta take if the Canadian regime decides to deny us independence? Now, what I don't like about this tweet is that it's signifying disdain, violence, upheaval, negative reinforcement. What Albertans have to make sure of is that they're very vigilant, they're informed. We are getting a vote no matter what, folks. The numbers are already there of those who have committed to sign for the ability for Alberta to hold a referendum. We know we're getting that vote in 2026. Violence, threats of violence, any threat of resistance is only going to push the government into further disdain to say, well, this is why we need things that escalate. I'll say, I don't want to say the Emergencies Act. That's a very directed negative. But when you see what happened to the Freedom Convoy, peaceful protests that easily turn into situations as soon as the government has a scapegoat, it's important that Albertans keep their eye on the prize. Corey Morgan replies and says, if a clear majority of Albertans voted to get to go on a clear question in a referendum, it would end very poorly if the rest of the country refused to allow the legal and peaceful move to independence. It would end very poorly. Now, what he's talking about is not violence. What he's talking about is Canada's image on the world stage. How would it look if a country said, even though our people have the right to vote to leave, we will not acknowledge it, we won't allow it? Many people have asked the question on this channel, what happens if the government refuses Alberta to leave? It's very simple how the laws work when you look at the Clarity Act, when you look at everything that we have going forward. Keith Wilson has done an absolutely amazing job. Again, I'll have Keith Wilson on the channel soon to talk about more of the ramifications, the legalities, as a constitutional lawyer, how things would work. But the way the law is laid out, and we've talked about it again, I'll just briefly touch on it, that if a majority would vote in favor of Alberta independence, legally by law, the Canadian government does not get a veto. First Nations do not get a veto. Other provinces do not get a veto. What must happen at that point is that it is triggered that the federal government, provincial governments, as well as First Nations must sit down with Alberta to discuss Alberta's exit. They don't have a say. They don't have a vote. They don't have control over what happens to Alberta. It's all in the Clarity Act, folks. Once negotiations take place, they are not allowed to say, well, they must enter in good faith for one, but they're not allowed to say, well, we're not going to allow this. We're not going to recognize it. It's like a divorce. I've summed it up to that as much as I can, that according to the law, it is like a divorce, at which point you separate your assets, you look at who's getting what, and you break off from the table and move forward with your independence. The problem with these threats is that these threats are going to continue. And it shows how scared people really are when they don't want to acknowledge the potential numbers that Albertans have. I wanted to touch base on this because when you look at the actual tweet, a good friend of the channel, Jeffrey Rath, with the Alberta Prosperity Project, very much says the best thing we could hope for from this situation. Everyone, please don't take the bait. This is a peaceful movement. Anyone suggesting armed resistance is falling into the same trap the RCMP set at Coots. If somebody asks, what will Alberta do if Canada sends in the military? Just answer them with a smile and simply say, bless your heart. I had someone aggressively trying to get me to answer that question at the Alberta Prosperity Project town hall in Red Deer. I told him I do not respond to ridiculous hypotheticals. Now, if you guys watched the live stream, that question did pop up. And yes, that is exactly what Jeffrey Rath said. They don't entertain that stuff because all we're talking about here is a referendum vote. We're not talking about shutting down the government. We're not talking about illegal actions or illegal behavior. This is within the laws of Alberta, of any province that wishes to recognize what its people want. Don't take the bait. Please don't take the bait. If you look over the weekend, and this is where I say we can't take the bait, the numbers are growing. This was in Red Deer as Rebel News, who are not even joined with Alberta Prosperity, that are merely out to answer questions for people, to talk about what's happening across the country, to talk about why Alberta is done getting screwed, and simply educate those with questions about, is Alberta independence the best thing for us? This is the room in a city of Red Deer, filled with people. We're seeing more and more photos of these events around the province, town halls, people getting up, being interested in hearing what people have to say about Alberta's independence, because it is very real. For anybody who wants to smother it and say, oh, it's never going to happen, it's not part of the picture. This is why those numbers are growing by roughly 5 to 10% in terms of favorability for independence as time goes on. I'm happy to announce that one of the reasons those numbers are going to continue to grow is this week I have Jeffrey Rath coming back on the channel to discuss this document here. A draft fully costed fiscal plan for an independent Alberta, the value of freedom. Now, I have this document, and I cannot yet show this document because Alberta Prosperity will be holding a press conference this week to talk about it. But Jeffrey Rath has offered his time, as well as hopefully the time of the person who helped draft this document. And what they have done is they've looked at the federal budget, they've looked at money that Alberta has paid out, they've looked at taxes that we pay out, they've used actual numbers, not pie-in-the-sky numbers, but actual numbers to show Albertans this is the money that could be saved and how it could be utilized within an independent Alberta, to the point that within 5 years of independence, it's projected that we have no income tax. Once Albertans start to see these numbers, once they start to see that this isn't just a fringe minority, this isn't just a radicalist group saying, oh, we took our ball and went home, we're done with the government, we just want away from corrupt liberals. This is about dollars and cents. This is about your future. This is about future generations and their ability to buy homes, to have jobs, to be prosperous. I have a feeling that once Albertans start to see these numbers, when they start to see this report, and again, we'll be breaking that down here on the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and alerts so that you know when that video drops. Very, very appreciative of Jeff Rath and his people for sitting down to discuss those. Now, that also brings me to one other update for this week to keep your eyes out for. I know this is kind of an update video. Later this morning, on the channel, I will be hosting an interview, one that I was talking about on this Friday Night Fringe, that I said I'm very excited about this interview. I didn't think we'd be getting this interview. I've had the Republican Party of Alberta, or Alberta Republicans, reach out to me after bumping into them at Ezra Levant's town hall in Edmonton, asking if Cam Davies, the proclaimed leader of the Republicans for Alberta, would be able to come on this channel to talk about his by-election for his running in Olds and Three Hills. Now, of course, if you've been watching this channel, you know my views on Cam Davies based on his behavior, we'll say, in terms of his time spent with former Premier Jason Kenney, his election fraud, many different things that I've always pointed out that I believe personally Alberta Republicans are split vote. They're essentially the PPC of Alberta. However, there has been a lot of interest from Albertans in those ridings for the Republican Party of Alberta. And I have often said that this platform, this channel, is a platform to get information to Albertans. That whether I like or dislike somebody or like or dislike where they stand, I think it's important that Albertans have an open table so that the decisions they make are within the best interests of them, their future, and their future in Alberta. So later today, keep an eye on the channel. I will be hosting an interview with Cam Davies. Now, don't think that I am going to let Cam Davies skate free and not answer some of my questions. This will not be a softball interview, but what it is more is to understand what is the future of the Republican Party of Alberta? What are they looking to do? Because my understanding is, well, they just want to form a party in Alberta's legislature, dethrone Danielle Smith, and cause nothing but trouble by splitting votes and possibly putting the NDP in power. All of those questions will be answered. Hopefully. Hopefully Cam gives us some answers. But again, for you, the viewer, I want to make sure everybody has an open table. Everybody openly is aware of what Alberta is facing, the people that are involved. I know there's rumblings going on that Preston Manning is talking about a Western Alliance. I've reached out to Preston and his people. Again, I've been in touch with Preston in the past. So hopefully I can get him and some of his people on the channel to talk about what they're doing. But what it's important to recognize here is there's a lot of factions that are blooming out. And this is one of the things that I warned everybody about, is that as this gains momentum, as you see in Red Deer, as this continues to gain momentum, there's going to be a number of special interest groups that get involved, factions that bloom, parties that come out of the woodwork that say, we have the best interest for Alberta. This is where it's best to showcase the opinions, the facts, and the information from all of these groups so that Albertans can get the information they need. Again, a quarter of their voting population resides on this channel. According to YouTube's analytics, at least, I think it's best to give you guys all of the information rather than my bias. We're less than a week away, exactly 1 week away from this by-election. The reason I'm hosting Cam Davies, not that I'm due an explanation, is that a lot of people are saying that if Cam Davies were to get this seat, that says a lot about the independence movement in Alberta, that Albertans indeed are fed up, that they're prepared for other options. Do I believe that the answer to getting away from the government is by installing more government that really wasn't beneficial to us at one point? Absolutely. I don't think that that's the answer. However, I will keep an open forum to hear what Cam Davies has to say. It says here that they've offered up 3 principled conservative candidates. Edmonton's running Edmonton Strathcona, as well as Cam Davies, Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills. Cam Davies is the one we got to watch here. If he gets this seat in Olds, Three Hills, based off of what we saw in Red Deer. This is roughly neighboring ridings. So if this many people are starting to talk about where Alberta moves going forward, again, the G7's happening. Anybody's guess is as good as mine as to what's going to happen at the G7. If Donald Trump's going to mention something about it again, I'll be updating you guys. I apologize that this video is not really news so much as an update video to give everybody a perspective of what to expect on this channel moving forward. Again, as summer breaks down, as federal politics kind of come to a hush, anything that happens federally, I will be trying to cover on the channel as well. Please don't think that this is turning into a purely Alberta channel, but this is important because it's the future of our entire country. Not just Alberta. Anytime something comes up federally, we will be discussing it here on the channel. But for now, folks, I want to make sure everyone across the country, not just Albertans, have the information and the understanding of what's taking place here. In my opinion, other provinces, once you look at these documents, once you see the money that is wasted and foregone to the federal government, other provinces should be taking a lead from Alberta and start asking the same question of their representatives. Why are we still here? Why are we still a part of Canada when the federal government just wants our money, when they're going to abuse us in order to just pad their friends' pockets and steal from us? Hopefully those questions will be answered. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Is there any questions you would have for Cameron Davies? Is there anything you would like me to ask Jeff Raff when it comes time to reveal this document of this budget for Alberta? Let me know your thoughts down below in terms of taking the bait and where you think Alberta is going to head moving forward as more and more special interest groups, bad actors, and people promoting negativity spawn within this movement for Alberta's independence. If it's your first time here, I hope this video's earned your subscription. Make sure as you hit that button, you click your bell for all notifications. Again, join me live here on the channel each and every Friday for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show, where we go over everything that happened this week in politics, everything we know that's coming up in the week ahead, joined by the beautiful Mrs. Fringe. We always look forward to chatting with you guys in those live streams outside of making these videos. I most importantly look forward to hearing from you this Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.